Hey guys, I am wearing my floweriest shirt for our first, I can't call it Flower Friday because it's not going to be always about flowers. It's going to be ornamentals, trees, garden design, but our new schedule starts today, Friday. Every Friday we're going to have content like this, and then every Sunday and Tuesday we're going to be having our normal vegetable gardening content. So I'm glad you made it today. Let's get started. There are a lot of leftover summer flowers on nursery shelves right now. You might be tempted to buy some, and they might even be on sale. Probably not though. There are a whole list of flowers that are on their way out. Even in the mildest winter climate, these flowers aren't going to thrive, and they most likely won't even grow. Or they're already getting ready to finish flowering, and then you'll just have a bunch of dead sticks on a little half-green bush. Impatience, Marigolds, Petunias, Geraniums, annual salvia, zinnias, sunflowers. In that list, there is one, Petunias, that will live through a frost-free winter and take off again in spring. A lot of people think that spring flowers are to be planted in spring and then they grow through summer. But those people would be missing out on a whole season or two of beautiful color. Spring blooming flowers are sown outdoors in fall and winter in mild winter climates. And for northern gardeners with frigid winters, there are some you can plant in fall that will grow right through the winter and be ready for bloom when the weather warms up in spring. Or you can start your seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date and put them out when the ground thaws, and you'll have a huge jump start on your spring flowers. In mild winter climates, if you can get your flowers blooming before Christmas, they can bloom right through winter and through spring. 5 to 6 full months. But you northerners are okay too, because your spring flowers will generally bloom longer than southern gardeners, because in the south, the heat takes them out sooner than they would in the north. So really hardy annuals are great for everyone. In just a minute, I'm going to talk about many flowers that love the cool and cold weather, and whether or not you and your zone can grow them through the winter. But you need to know two things for this video to work for you: your frost dates and your growing zone. I'll leave 2 links down in the video description where you can go and get that information really easily. If you want to pause the video right now and click those links to find out your frost dates and zone, then come back. You'll know right away which of the flowers we go through will work for you right now and which ones you may have to wait until late winter for. We'll wait. Okay, so now that you know your frost dates and zone, let's talk about timing. Typically, seeds of hardy annuals can be started outdoors 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date, or indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. If you've already missed your window for the first frost date, don't worry. There's still 2 options for you. Number 1, purchase transplants from the garden center if they're zone appropriate, and we'll go over that in a minute. And number 2, sow the seed in the garden anyway and see what happens. The worst case is they'll just sit there and wait and then come up at the point they're supposed to in late winter or early spring. Okay, so what I want to do is go through some great hardy annuals one by one, and I'll let you know a little bit about each one, including the hardiness zone, whether to sow them indoors or outdoors. There is at least one biennial in this list and a perennial or 2 as well. So let's start with a Kilia or Yarrow. It is a perennial, zone 4, so it's hardy down to zone 4, so it can get pretty cold without dying. You want to sow your seeds indoors or outdoors, and it really is going to want full sun. Another great cool season hardy annual are Bachelor Buttons, one of the earliest flowers to bloom in the spring. It's hardy to zone 6. It's a great reseeder, which means it's going to take care of planting the rest of the years for you. You just have to get it planted this one time. It likes full sun to part shade, so you get a little bit of option there. Next one is Calendula. It is hardy to zone 7. It's got some a lot of spring flowers are more of the pastels, pinks and purples. Calendula is bright orange. It's really going to warm up the garden quickly. It's best to start those indoors and then put them out in part shade to full sun. Clarkia or Godetia is hardy to zone 8. You can start them indoors or outdoors. Full sun, definitely for Clarkia, and it is also a great reseeder. Dianthus is hardy to zone 5. Now when I'm saying these zones, that means if you get them planted and growing in, for Dianthus, zone 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it's not, as long as you don't get below a zone 5 temperature in the winter, Dianthus will continue to grow. All of these, whatever their zone happens to be. So get them in the ground, get them growing a little bit. You want little plants, and then they will take whatever weather zone 5 or 6 or whatever I say has to throw at them. They're not going to grow fast. They're not going to start blooming. But what's happening is, while the green on top might not look like it's doing much, the roots underground are getting established. So when the weather warms up in spring, they're going to take off like you've never seen. Now, if you don't get them sown in time and you're sowing them outdoors, like I said, they're just going to sit there until they feel in the spring or late winter, whenever the temperature gets to the right temperature that they like, then they'll start to grow. So you can't really lose. So Dianthus is hardy to zone 5. Like, it's best to start them indoors and then move them out once they're, you know, an inch tall or so. And they do like part shade to full sun. Foxgloves, or digitalis, is a biennial, which means you sow the seed the first season, and then it will the first year, so summer, all the way through summer, it's going to build this nice, beautiful plant with these big leaves. And then the following year, it will bloom, set seed, and then it will start again. So in a couple of years, because you'll always have some coming along, you'll have blooms every single year. And they're a great self-seeder. Leave one bloom stalk on there, let it dry out, and you'll see those seed pods start to crack open. Just take off the branch and just shake it around wherever you want it to seed itself, and it will do that. Foxglove is hardy to zone 5. You can sow it indoors or outdoors, and it does like part shade to full sun. If you have in a really hot summer climate, part shade definitely is going to help it kind of get through that heat of summer. The next one is Iceland Poppies. These are such great, if you plant a whole drift of these, they're such great texture. They're very papery. They hold the plants are very low, and they have these tall stems with these very papery poppies on them. So they're one of my favorites. They're such great colors. They are hardy to zone 6. You can sow them outdoors in full sun, and they are also a great self-seeder. Larkspur is a great one to sow outdoors. Hardy to zone 6, definitely full sun for larkspurs. It's always nice to have a mixture of low growing plants and then tall spiky flowers, and larkspur will definitely give you the tall spikes. Nigella, or Love in a Mist, is hardy to zone 6. You want to sow those outdoors in full sun. I'm definitely going to have a lot of those in my cottage garden. They are definitely known for being cottage garden flowers. They're very, classic, vintage looking blooms and plants, and they're great cut flowers as well. Sometimes the star of the nursery shelves in the fall are pansies or any type of viola. They are hardy to zone 7. You can sow indoors in late winter or very early spring. And they'll take temperatures down to 25 degrees. So if you're in zone 9, 10, or 11, you can go ahead and sow them right now outside, and they are one of the longest performers that I grow. I planted mine from transplants last year, I think in November, and they went all the way through June, and I ended up having to just pull them out because I needed to put something else in there. So definitely a long producer, especially in zone 9 or above. Rudbeckia, or sometimes known as Black-Eyed Susan, is hardy down to zone 5. You can sow indoors or out. It likes sun to part shade. I would say mostly sun. It is a biennial or a short-lived perennial. So it might take a year or so to bloom. It might last for a few years, depending on your climate. But it's definitely one of those that brings a lot of zing to a border. Those flowers just pop out at you. They're so bright yellow. Now, believe it or not, snapdragons are one of the most cold tolerant hardy annuals. They go down to zone 4. So most everybody can grow those through the winter. You can start them indoors or outdoors in full sun, and they'll give you those cool you pinch the blooms and the little dragon's mouth opens. Great fun for kids. Also a really great cut flower, and if you deadhead the flower spikes as they die, they'll keep producing until the weather gets too warm. Sweet Alyssum, a companion plant that I talk a lot about in my book and in a lot of videos. Sweet Alyssum is great for bringing in a lot of beneficial insects to your vegetable garden. It's hardy to zone 5. You can sow outdoors or indoors. It's a great self-seeder. It's one of those that you sow it once, you'll never have to worry about sowing it again, but it's not invasive. You know, you can pull them out very easily, but it will self-seed all over your garden. I happen to love that. And you want to put these in full sun to part shade. One of Emily's favorite flowers are sweet peas. If you want some height in the back of your borders, you know, build some teepees, let the sweet peas ramble up there. They are hardy to zone 7. You can sow them indoors or outdoors. Now in mild winter climates, this is one of those that if you can get them to bloom by Christmas, they'll bloom all winter and spring. They want full sun, and if you've never grown sweet peas before, or if you've never smelled sweet peas before, you are in for quite a treat. Another great smelling flower for this time of year is stock. It has a clove type smell. Just a really spicy, great smell. It's hardy to zone 9, so not everyone can grow it through the winter. Possibly zone 8, but you can sow them in the fall in those 2 zones. But for cooler zones, 8 or below, start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, and you'll want to grow them in full sun to part shade. So I hope that gives you a great idea of what to go looking for. Again, if you're kind of pushing it and getting close to your start date, you can grow any of these from transplants as long as your zone applies. And you can have, you know, some transplants in pots near the house or in beds if you have a larger budget and want to fill some beds with transplants of these flowers. It's still not too late. And again, if you sow the seeds outdoors in the ground and it's too late, they'll come up by themselves. You won't have any, it'll save you work in the spring. Let's put it that way. All right, guys, I hope you learned something on our first flower video. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.